there. Okay, finally, I apologize for the delays. It is good to have the Halsteads back with us, and most of you have been with us while we've done this in the past. And my goal when we have the missionaries to report back is I like to have the husband do 1 week and then have a separate time where the wife can give us her perspective. And there's two motivations for that. One, I want to be able to get a different perspective, but two, Karolyn, I want us to get to know you better, because what I found is it's very easy to do the, bless the missionary bit, but if I don't know you and I don't hear from you personally, I may pray for Brent, but I won't pray for you, and I don't like that. And I want to be able to pray for you with your needs and things that you struggle with, and I can't do that unless we hear from you. So that's why you're getting picked on tonight. So, Karolyn, why don't you just go ahead and share a little bit what's going on and your perspectives, et cetera, and we'll rest of you be listening for some questions, and we'll pepper her at the end. Go ahead.
Well, we're home on a furlough we were supposed to go back probably a couple weeks ago, but we extended our furlough to be after Johanna was married, which will be next week. But it doesn't look like the country's opening up for travel. So we will be here in the States quarantined till all this lifts. Wisconsin has lifted some of the lockdown, but it's hard to say what's going to happen with those lockdowns, if they have numbers that rise, if it will come down again. So I do feel with this pandemic that God has put us right here to serve him, and he has a mission field and he has a work for us to do. And we need to be faithful right here where he put us. It's sort of uncertain. And so I think that is stressful in some ways, because I know as a wife, you want to be able to plan your life and kind of be in control and feel like you know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. And people say, so when are you going back? You don't have an answer for them. We can't really know. We don't know when we're going back to Kenya right now. It could be in a month, and it could be in 6 months, So having those short-term plans and long-term plans can be stressful. But so right now we're all quarantining like with everybody else. So okay. Is there any question you have, like you want to know about my ministry in Kenya?
That would be somewhere good to start. Your ministry there, ministry here.
Yeah.
Struggles you're having personally that we need to be praying for you. Yeah. Any of that?
Well, in Kenya, when we first got to Kenya, I was very much involved with homeschooling my kids and just keeping our house going. I was involved in local church ministry, but not as involved in like the college ministry and in traveling with Brent. But now that we are empty nesters, I'm much more involved with the college ministry. I do teach. I'm teaching the women. I'm mentoring women in the college. So you could pray for those ministries. We travel a lot into outlying areas, and I'm finding that to be a real blessing. And it's sort of, it opens people up to our ministry when the wife shows up, and it's been very helpful. And I just, for an illustration, we were pulled aside. We were out like about 2 hours out of Nairobi, and this police check, they pulled us over, and they were just fine with where we were going. We're going to another church. It was on a Sunday morning, and there was a police officer there that wanted to shake my hand because he had never seen a white woman that far out of like where he lived. He had never seen a white woman. And so it really made me realize that in general, like there's a lot of missionary wives in Nairobi. Like we will get together for fellowships, but very few of them travel outside of Nairobi, and we kind of have an insulated little environment that we live in. And so that's really an honor. It's a privilege to be able to minister to women outside of, Nairobi, and to be on the road and meeting people and being a witness for Christ. So that's neat, it is really neat when we're in churches to see these women just kind of come up to me and want to talk with me and just, start making friends with these different there's pastors' wives, and then the women of the church. I was able to do a mission conference for a ladies conference for one of the churches in a very rural area, and I brought along someone who could translate for me because they only spoke Kamba, which was a tribal language. I know some Swahili, but I don't know Kamba. And it was exciting because I felt the ladies really received me well. And I'd like to be able to do more of that when we return. Really, we're eager to get back to our ministry. So it is hard to just wait on the Lord and wait for his timing for returning. So just trying to think what else I could have you pray for. Just the living conditions in Kenya can be difficult, and like the roads, driving on the roads can be very difficult, and it can be stressful. And I think that's a good thing to pray for our missionaries, just for protection. And but I do feel very safe in Kenya. We've lived there for 13 years. We live at a different level. We, when we're out and about, there's a certain vigilance that we have, but when you're living there, you kind of get used to that. And it is nice being back in the States and not having that vigilance and kind of always watching for things. So, and then I think another prayer request is that we thought we would only be gone till the beginning of June, and we left our dogs in the care of a young man who's willing to take care of them, but it just becomes more complicated, and dogs are kind of like kids. So I'd appreciate if you pray for our dogs. It is hard to be away from your dogs this long, and they're puppies. They're younger dogs, and so it would have been nice to have been back and be teaching them and training them to be good dogs.
Right.
Not really sure what kind of dogs we'll have when we get back, who have kind of antisocial dogs, who haven't seen people for a while. But we have a young man that's coming in, and I think he's going to do a good job with them. But and then with the wedding plans, that's been hard to plan a wedding with this pandemic, because things have changed. Like now they've lifted, but yet we still have social distancing, and how to negotiate all that, and how to keep everybody feeling safe, but yet meet everybody's needs, because this is their wedding. They want to see people. They want people at their wedding. So that's a blessing that they lifted the lockdown, because I thought, how are we going to have a wedding? You can only have 10 people in the building, but now they can have the building fairly occupied, but not, it will be, everything staggered apart, throughout the building, or throughout the church auditorium.
If this helps any, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if this helps any, there was a clarification made on that the 10 people from the CDC thing is considered for churches 10 family units.
10 family, yeah.
So a person
there's
is
a lot of questions even from state to state, and what exactly now, I'm not sure what exactly. They had church last Sunday, and will have church again on this following Sunday, so before the wedding. So I'm really glad that they've had a couple of social, and they've worked out the bugs, because they, to have it open up on our wedding would have been really a nightmare, not really understanding exactly what we could do and what we shouldn't do.
Right.
And people not really knowing the system yet. It would be hard to do that. So, yeah, but it's sad. Most of our side of the family isn't going to be there. Like, we have relatives in Florida, relatives in Tennessee, Minnesota that will not come to the wedding, and that would have come. So it is, and then his side, there's some too that aren't going to come to the wedding because of the pandemic. So, but just the logistics of it all, just continue to pray. And Johanna and Jonathan they found a place to live, and they are looking at buying a small condo. And they made an offer on it. So I'd appreciate if you would pray that they could get, that offer would be accepted, and they could start that. Because it looks like we're so close to the wedding now. We're hoping that we'll be able to have them sign for it after their honeymoon. Like, they'll come back from their honeymoon and sign on this condo and move in. So it's kind of hectic. So pray for all that, that it works out well. Otherwise, I think they're going to pitch a tent out, and they'll just sleep in a tent until they finally live.
Take a lot of pictures.
It'll be fun. They're honeymooners, so they'll enjoy that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So those things, mainly are consuming our lives right now. And just wisdom, how to deal with this pandemic.
Okay. Now, one question I have and I think Brent may have answered something on this last week, but I forgot. This Locust thing coming in, Kenya's in it. Have you heard much from your area how it's affecting the people?
Well, do pray for Kenya, because they're also having a rainy season that is extremely heavy rains. And you know how you want rain, but you don't want it to wash your whole, garden away. You don't want to have it wash all the crop away. And they are having problems with that. And then if it's too much rain, you get disease and things like that. You won't get a good crop. So, and then the locust infestation it seems like they haven't really been hit too badly with it, but there's also a second wave to it, because those locusts lay eggs, and then like once the rain stops and they get things growing, then the eggs hatch, and then you're going to have the whole locust over again. So yeah, just continue to pray for people. And they're just getting into this pandemic. They're probably like 40 days behind the US, but they're really locking down tight. And it's the government is very authoritative and very heavy-handed when they lock down. And some people, like, they live from day to day. And if they can't go out and earn a living and just make enough money to pay for food that day, then they're not going to eat that day. So it really is, like, when you think about this lockdown, yeah, you're saving lives, you're keeping that curve from, you're flattening the curve. But then if people can't earn money to feed themselves, you can have problems then too. So,
Right.
And there's also, like, if people get desperate, then they can start robberies and theft, and that can increase too. So the security in the country, we have, let me think, the co-workers that are there, like 4 families at least, 4 families that are there right now. Actually, yeah. And then we have extended missionaries that we do know in the country. And so far they're doing well, but but it is really locked down and the ministry is limited. So pray for those families that they just are safe and have just wisdom how to conduct ministry, how to be a witness there, how to keep their churches growing, how to minister. You know, it's technically it's harder because people don't have the internet access. They can't afford the internet. Like there is internet there, but they can't afford that data. So contacting people and like having Zoom, they can't afford that much data. So
Right.
so it is limited what you can do.
We take a lot for granted, don't we?
Yeah, it's totally different over there.
Questions from anyone?
Yes, I have one.
Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, let me put this on. You mentioned that when you were out driving that the police stopped you and just were checking everything. We've been missionaries in South Africa. We've helped there, and we had that happen to us once too. And they were glad to meet Americans, and they gave us no problem. But I was just curious, if you're way out there, do they speak English? Did the police officer speak English, or did they?
English is one of the primary languages. There's two primary languages. It's English and Swahili. And almost everyone who's educated speaks some amount of English. And like in Nairobi, we have students in our college that Brent has tested their English, and they're actually at a level of a like English is their mother tongue. Some of these kids. Very few adults are like that, but there's young people growing up that English is becoming so important now for education and for good jobs. And even way out in the rural areas, the police know English. And, you know, to be a police officer, they would have to be well enough educated and they would know English. Most, but like in those smaller villages, the older people there's some very elderly people who know no English at all and might not even be very fluent in Swahili. Like they might just know their tribal language. Yeah. But we have noticed a change in the language over the last 10 years that English is becoming, even out in those rural areas, English is becoming more prevalent. And in fact, when I spoke to the ladies, I had notes for everybody. And I had somebody translate my notes into Swahili. And I had equal amounts of Swahili and English notes. And I would say it was like equal. Some people wanted the English notes and some people wanted the Swahili notes. And to me, that was interesting. Because even if they're not strong, like speaking to me in English, if they have any education, they could probably read English better than they could read Swahili because they have more education. Reading, I don't know if that makes sense, but yes, their reading is better in English than it is in, right, because it's more like, Swahili is kind of the language that they just talk in, you know, but they're not educated in Swahili. They're educated in English. So it's interesting and it's changing. It's rapidly changing how important that language is.
What's the average wage in American dollars? You convert that to American dollars. What do they make a day or a week?
That's changing too. I think when we first got to Kenya, I felt like if somebody could make $2 a day, like 10, 13 years, 14 years ago, if they were making $2, $3 a day, you know, that was like the vast majority of people were like at that level.
Minimum wage is 40 cents an hour.
Okay, minimum wage is 40 cents an hour is what Brent just said. But there's some things now, like there was a person in one of the churches that we fellowship with that he got a job as a co-pilot with Kenyan Airlines, and he probably was making comparable to what an American would make as a co-pilot, you know. So there's some internet jobs now and things like that that kind of get you more working with people outside of Kenya. And so I think that wage will come up as the economy in Kenya gets better. What's really hard is that there's not a lot of part-time jobs, or like entry-level jobs, or like for our students, it's either you work full-time, and full-time can be 7 days a week, or you don't work at all. So that's hard for young people. There's just not a lot of good jobs. And like, I know one girl, she graduated from college and it took her 3 years of working like internships where she was like kind of volunteering her time to finally land a job in her field that she was trained for and actually have a real job. It took her a while to get a decent job. So it is different.
Thank you. Yeah.
Someone else?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned mentoring. You mentioned mentoring the girls at the college. And so I was curious what that looks like. What do you do with them? And yeah, that if you could share some of that.
Yeah, one of the other missionary wives and I have divided up the ladies in the college, and the men are all divided up by the other missionary men. And we each take maybe a certain number, and we're responsible for them for that year. It usually changes each year. And like, if they have issues or things that they're struggling with, we're there to help them. And so the last couple of years, Brent and I have kind of co-mentored, and I've mentored the first year students. So I mentored the ladies and he mentors the men the first year. And we have developed kind of a curriculum that we're taking them through with some real specific things that we want to challenge them in their lives. Mainly, we have meetings once a month on that everybody, all the students come in for a couple hours, and we have like an hour mentoring meeting, and then we have a faculty meeting at that time, and we have a chapel time. So everybody's there at that time, and so that's what we've been taking them through. Like with the women, I will divide out and I'll talk about more like women's issues and just helping them to grow as it's really important to me that they see their ministry have a biblical view of women's roles in the church, because I think it's exciting, it's amazing all that women can be involved in, but if we're not careful, especially in Kenya, there's a mindset that like a woman could be a pastor. So we really work with those ladies and help them to see what their roles are in the church and what is biblical role for them.
We stress spiritual disciplines, having devotions.
Oh, and yeah, we go over like spiritual disciplines. The students are required to fill out spiritual discipline reports, which each week that they're in the college and in classes. And those include like their church ministry, their church attendance, their devotion time each day, and things like that. So
Do you feel like you get to know them very well? Like, do they open up, or is it not so? Like, how are the ladies there?
It takes a while, and it like I go to all the activities, I go to everything extra. I have a few classes, that I teach, And it's really sweet because like a couple of years ago, I was at another church, and one of our churches in our fellowship, and one of the girls in that church had like 4 years ago been in the college. And she came running up to me and she just gave me a big hug, and she was like, "Oh, Mrs. Halstead, I'm so glad to see you." And Kenyans are not huggers. So anytime, I always gauge that, because anytime somebody comes up to me and wants to give me a hug, I think that's somebody who I have a relationship with, and who I have a good relationship with them. So, and it's just really sweet to see that it takes time to develop relationships with people. But I think that we're breaking through, and I'm really pleased with like even the sweethearts that some of these girls have. They really want to serve the Lord, and they're very open to learning what the Bible says, and having a biblical view of their role as a woman in the church. And then I really have a vision for them that they would be godly wives and mothers. So it's neat.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's good. Someone else? Anyone? You might be getting off the hook, Karolyn.
How was it transitioning from the empty nest when your children, left the home, and was that difficult for you?
Yeah. So I think it was about 3 years ago. No, it was 4 years ago, because Sarah just graduated from college. So she's been in college for 4 years. And we returned 4 years ago, and I thought, oh, I'll be really glad to have this house empty, and it'll be so much fun, and actually it was really lonely, and it took a while to adjust to that. It did. And we have a very busy ministry, but yet I know that probably the first 6 months, like sometimes I could hardly pass a kid's room, and I feel just like sad inside, and oh, there it is. And I know when we left Kenya before our furlough, you're always kind of in this mad rush to get, packed and get out. And I was just like, if you're not taking it back to the US and I'm going to throw it away anyways, I'll worry about it when I come back. When I come back, I'll deal with it. And I came back, and I like go through their stuff, and I'd be like, how do I throw this away? It has their handwriting on it, It was like a piece of garbage, and I'd be like, oh, but this has Sarah's handwriting on it, But, and then like a year ago, we actually brought Wesley back with us and another intern, and I just really enjoyed having them with us. And I just went into high gear cooking and taking care of those boys. And then once the intern left, Emily came in October, and we had Emily and Wesley there. And that was it was really sweet. It was fun to have them back. And now we're here in the States, and we're living with all 4 of them. And so we're kind of like, it takes a lot of adjustment coming in, because they get mature, and they mature, and they become independent. And yet you come in and you're like, I'm the mom. I decide where we put the dishes and where, and they do get mad at me because I come into their kitchen and I reorganize it. And I'm like, why does this, and they get mad at me. They're like, where did you put the, colander, Mom? And I'm like, it shouldn't have been there, So I gotta learn to let go.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it is interesting, because it's a constant, adjustment with family.
Oh, yeah.
And now Johanna's leaving, and she's gonna, move out for good and be with Jonathan. So it's exciting, but it's also sad, like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's an adjustment. It is. But,
I agree. Thank you for being open to share those things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I feel like I'm doing things that I never did when I had kids there. And I was really careful not to overload and, and make sure that I had time to homeschool my kids. And it's a lot of work. But now that I have the time, I'm really enjoying being able to just really follow Brent in ministry and be there with him. I think it's so valuable to be able to travel with him and, just be much more a part of his ministry.
What does
you
it
make-
look like? Go ahead, Angie.
I worked on a master's with our college in Kenya, and I started it like 8 years ago. When did I start? 8 years ago, and maybe
You started at the beginning, so that would have
Oh.
been 2011.
2011 I started the master's,
And you graduated 2016.
and then in 16 I graduated with my master's. And I did that, and I really cut it back, so I did it gradual. Like in the States, I think it might take 1.5 years to get that master's, but I did it over like 5 years. So that when my kids were gone, I could be much more part of the college. I have a master's, and so that I'm better equipped to be teaching at a college level. So I was glad I did that. That was a lot of work, and it was fun. It was interesting, very interesting. And I had never held a systematic theology before, and I didn't even know if my wrists could hold it up. And I found, I'm only talking to Pastor right now. He only knows what a systematic theology is. And I enjoyed reading it. I actually liked reading Erickson. We had Erickson. It's like this big, it's huge. And it was fascinating. It's on one of these shelves back here. I might pick it up again and reread it. It's interesting.
You can read my part.
Now, what about the young people? When you were saying about the young ladies, in the college, do they come from? What kind of homes do they come from? Is it they have a mother and father? Is it like here in the States, or?
It could vary. I think most of the kids come from church families in our fellowship of churches in Nairobi. And like right now we have one of our pastors is sending his daughter, Amanda, to the college, which I'm just so thrilled about. She finished high school and she's in the college, and Brent's teaching her right now online. And so like they can have a variety of backgrounds. One of our students was basically, I think that her mother had died and her father was not saved. And she got saved in this community near this church that is part of our fellowship. And she just really grew and just really had a heart for the Lord. And she wanted to come to the Bible college. And she her father was fairly wealthy and was like, he lived outside of Nairobi, but he would pay for her to live in Nairobi and go to school. And so he was okay with paying for her to come to our college. And she just really was like one of those baby Christians that just was taking it all in, and she was so much fun. And then like 3 years ago, she got married, and she asked Brent to do the message for her wedding. And it was really an honor. It was, and I've seen her several times even now, and we have a very close relationship. It's just fun to see her, and she's a wife now, and she's got a real heart for the Lord, and her and her husband are serving the Lord. So it's neat.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah. So there's a variety. I don't know.
Most are first generation Christians.
You think most of the
Oh,
students
yeah.
are first generation? Some of them are, like Amanda would be second
Yeah,
generation.
She's rare though.
Yeah. We had another
That's
girl
interesting.
that was like the church, their she was their housekeeper, and the wife led her to the Lord and then encouraged her to go to the college. She started going to we had actually two people like that, where they're house workers, and their employer is a Christian and is like doing everything they can to get them through the college. And it's really neat. Just people like that.
It's good.
There's some that like go and they get a secular degree, and then they'll also come to our college and get maybe a certificate with us, or they'll work on a bachelor's degree too. You know, maybe they're in between and they haven't really got a job yet, so they'll kind of be working on that too.
Off subject a little bit. I got the invite for the wedding for the virtual, and it's on my inbox. I can't look at it right now, but is that going to be with Zoom?
It's gonna
How
be
do you get
It
into
will
it?
be a live stream. So is that YouTube?
It's gonna be, what I sent them, it's our church website.
Okay.
Live stream.
It will link to our church website, and it will be live stream.
Okay. So if anyone wants to get into that, let me know and I can forward it to you, forward the email link to you. So just let me know. Any other questions? You're good. None? Okay. Well, Karolyn, thank you for joining us again.
Well, thank you for having me come, and I really appreciate that you guys are all interested in my side of it. And I actually, we just covet your prayers. We know that things happen, and it's because you're praying for us, and we really appreciate that. And I know that church we attended in Huntington way back when we were on deputation. We know how that church prays for missionaries, so we appreciate you very much.
Yeah, you guys have been faithful for a long time, and it's good to see. So keep it up. You mentioned you guys are trying to be working while you're here. Feel free to shoot back down. We'd love to have you.
Okay.
We'll put you guys to work again.
Yeah, we'd love. Well, we'll see what we do. Our furlough was kind of cut short, our travels, and so we would like to, at some point, we'll hopefully get some meetings up, or we could just pick up and go right back to Kenya if it opens up. So it's hard to know what we'll be doing.
Right.
But, yeah.
Y'all stay in touch and let me know if you can be shooting down this way, and
Okay.
we'll do our best to help you out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys have church, what, in 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Now that one's online as well?
Okay. Yeah.
They're having services.
Yeah. They have opened up the building. You can go in, but we're, for now, we've got some different circumstances that we just feel like we need to be protective of. So,
Gotcha.
but we're still doing live stream. So,
Okay. Well, it is
Okay.
good to see y'all again. Y'all have a good night.
okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, and the rest of us, you can stay for our prayer time if you want, or if you guys need to get off, that's fine.
We're going to go and watch the live stream for our church. But thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, the rest of us, why don't we go ahead? I'm going to shut off the Facebook side, and any other prayer requests before we go to prayer? A number of things to remember from her. There's a lot of things going on. Any others? Okay.